Hi, greetings, and welcome to Co-Ed for Kids Facebook Live. Our organization is an ideal place to find resources for families. My name is Melissa Shamo. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator for Co-Ed for Kids Prevention Services. Thank you for joining us. Our topic today is going to be of interest, so you'll want to stick around. It is one of overcoming things in our life that we may not have planned for. How do we overcome when we might have a roadblock in our day when something didn't go as planned? Personally speaking, I'd like to share a little heartbreaking event. I lost both of my parents within 4 months of each other. My children at the time were 11 and 15, and they were very, very close to their grandparents. And it was a little devastating at the time. I felt like our world was just crashing in. I wasn't sure how I was going to get through the grief, let alone help the two littles get through their grief as well. But fortunately, we had a good support system of family and friends. We had a lot of memories that we were able to fall back on. We obviously took a lot of pictures in their lifetimes and many stories of funny things that we all did together. And that brought us through a huge part of the grief. We continued with traditions and rituals that we had with my parents. We bounced back. We got together, we surrounded each other with a lot of love and understanding and support, and we got through the hurt. Joining me today are two ladies from Newsy Mom, and they'll have some stories of families and parents doing the resilient piece and that bounce back factor. And I'm sure they'll have a lot of interesting tips to share with us as well. Today, first of all, I'll introduce Michaela Madison.
Yeah, I'm Michaela, and I guess a little bit about me. We founded Newsy Mom, LLC, back in 2016, right after I had my daughter, Remington. So she was just about 5 months old, roughly. And we started Newsy Mom as kind of I guess, a goal to create this sisterhood of motherhood. We lean on each other. We're here for one another. We get that the days aren't always perfect. Actually, have you ever had a perfect day? I mean, it's all kind of wild and crazy and kind of learn along the way. And Newsy Mom has really allowed us to branch out and meet some amazing moms. And so that's a little bit about what we're about. We do news, information, all the logistics to make sure our moms have everything they need to be the best moms they can be. And that's how we got connected, obviously, with Co-Ed for Kids. And I know I'm pretty excited to be here for this today and excited to see where this conversation goes. So
thank you. And Shaheedrah?
Hi, my name is Shaheedrah Strong. I am a part of Newsy Mom. I'm on the board, as well as I do some mom sessions at least maybe once every other week. It just depends on how perfect my day is. But I have 4 amazing kids. I've got an amazing husband. I work full time. I also am very, very, very involved in ministry. So I do a lot of ministry stuff as well. This is such a great opportunity because I think a lot of moms miss out on the piece of really understanding resilience and how it applies to their motherhood and how it applies to your womanhood. Because aside from moms and being parents, you're still a woman or you're still a man, and you still have to grow in resilience in those areas to be better parents, separately and conjunctively. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I am too. You know, there are a lot of multiple stressors in our lives, and it reduces our ability and our capacity to cope. We have challenges coping effectively with typical day-to-day stresses. These stresses may show up as family, relationship problems, maybe a serious health problem, problems in our workplace, even some financial problems, just to name a few. We recognize these stressors and the effect that they have functioning in our homes. That has a direct impact on our children. And I really think that we need to know parents with resiliency have that flexibility and the inner strength, and it's necessary so they can bounce back when things are not going well. As we've said on lots of our Facebook Lives, and it's been mentioned today, we can't eliminate the stress from parenting. And we need to maybe turn those around, focus on our strengths, and see these experiences as opportunities for growth and for learning. Parenting is hard work, and even with the best resources that are available, meeting the needs of our family members in today's fast-paced society is difficult. So what these gals are going to share with us today are some maybe stories or experiences, and tell us about resiliency, and give us training and resiliency to cope with different situations. Like, what does resiliency look like in a family? What are some characteristics?
Melissa, you said something that kind of caught me, and that was that stressors come with parenting. And I almost say parenting is a stressor because I don't know if you're not worried about what your toddler's putting in their mouth. You're worried about your teen driver taking on the roads for the first time. You're worried about your college student that's heading to college away from home for the first time. Your adult child who's now trying to parent themselves for the first time. I don't know that it ever comes without a little bit of stress.
Yes. I think your parents still parent you.
Yes, exactly.
That's for sure.
And I think that the key, I love the conversation about resiliency, because we need to understand that parenting is going to be hard. I mean, and any important job like that is hard, and there's a lot of impact. You know, you're molding. I look at my daughter as this piece of Play-Doh that I get to mold into whatever she's going to become, or at least have some say-so or influence in who she becomes one day. And I guess a story that I could share with you about, I think, is a good example of resiliency. So I'm a list maker. As Shaheedrah knows, I'm a list maker. I've got a lot of working parts in my life, and I have to be on a schedule. I'm very scheduled to be able to accomplish it all. And I can remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, I had a birth plan. I had a post-birth plan. I had the whole 9 yards. I knew the hospital I was going to deliver at. I mean, all of it. And I can remember my labor didn't go as planned. By the time I was in labor, I'm like, let's go to that hospital. It's closer. And then, you know, having my daughter, I said, okay, so my approach was, and I'm not against co-sleeping, but for example, my approach was, I want my daughter to be in her own bed, in her own room from the very beginning. I never want to be the parent who has to get my kid out of my bed and share my bed with my child. Well, I did that, and from the day one, she was in her own bed. I was very strict on a bedtime routine, the reading, the singing, had it down to a T. About a year and a half into her sweet little life, she decides to start climbing out of her crib and into my bed. And I thought, well, this is just a phase. My daughter will be 3 next month. I can't remember the last time I had a nice comfy bed all to myself with plenty of room. And it was a good learning moment for me, because even though I had done everything by the book, so to speak, my daughter had different plans, because that's what children do in our lives, and they surprise us every day. And I had to find myself, okay, this isn't working how I had planned, but it's okay. And one day, believe it or not, ask me this at 6 a.m. when I have to wake up, I'm going to miss her sleeping in my bed and not being there when I turn over in the morning. And so I'm trying to, you know, be resilient in that, taking every moment for what it's worth, appreciating where we're at right now, even though it definitely wasn't in my parenting plan, so to speak. So that was probably a learning lesson of resilience for me, definitely, for sure.
And I think you said something that's so key with resiliency in families and what it looks like. It looks like you knowing what by the book is, and understanding that when by the book does not happen, you have to adjust. Adjustment is probably one of the biggest characteristics, and I know adjustment in itself is not a verb or action, but you make an adjustment to be able to be resilient for your children. Whether it's co-sleeping, whether it's signing off on bad slips at school, whether it's bailing them out of jail, you know what I mean? And that's a real factor, because for a lot of moms, some kids aren't perfect. They don't mold no matter how much you twist the clay or poke it, no matter how you want it, they take their own paths. And as parents, when we're learning to develop resiliency, and even if you've been a parent longer than we have, that doesn't mean that you still can't be resilient. It still doesn't mean that resiliency isn't a part of the characteristic of your parenting, because that adjustment is everything. But you know, that resiliency comes with just those adjustments. And I think that is a huge characteristic that a lot of people miss out on, and they stress themselves over making adjustments.
And resiliency looks different for everybody. And yes, I think that's one thing that at Newsy Mom, we try to explain the diversity of motherhood and the seasons of motherhood and be there for everyone and understand that resiliency day to day, family to family looks very different.
It does.
Potty training is a great one, but that's my daughter's a whole nother story. I could talk to you for ages about the resiliency in my home. But we worry so much as parents about making sure our children are resilient and making sure that our children know how to cope and making sure that our children are ready to face the world. But we also have to remember that we're the ones that lead by example and that they're mimicking our every move. And so when we have those stressors in our lives as parents, we have to remember to what do they say, practice what you preach, so to speak, and do what we're trying so hard to get our own children to do, and show them that no matter how stressful life is, because it is stressful, that you can get through it, keep your head level, and understand that life, there's no by the book, and there is no list making and just checking things off in life, because you're going to go, wait a minute, I didn't write that down, but it's now on my to-do list, and that's just how it works.
We did Disney in 2000, and my girl was 4, and I had it all planned out because you count back people online in the line, so okay, while she's on the teacup, you go get in line over here, and you get 6 people back. She would get off one ride, look at me, and say, "I'm not riding on that." And you talk about lists and plans. I was just like, the whole trip was just overwhelming for me from then on out.
Life doesn't come with an itinerary.
And
there's our slogan.
That was
That's
good.
resilience.
That is resilience.
Yeah.
Right. And what you mentioned, I like to say again, is how handling the stress, being positive, and finding your own strength to deal with it and get through it, because there's meltdown times. There really are. And I think that we need to have that balance when when there's darkness. Appreciate the light, because there's going to be light.
And understanding that you're not a bad parent by any means if you decide to take a step away for a moment. You're allowed, and it's not only good for you, it's good for your family. They joke about, I had to, you see those quotes, I had to lock myself in the bathroom, and the little people are pounding on the outside of the door. You're not wrong for having to take that breathing moment and just be in with yourself for a moment, because that's how you build resiliency, being right with you and making sure you're ready to take on the world. And so if you need to take 10 minutes and then come back to a situation and fresh breath and new eyes, that's okay. You're allowed.
And it is okay. And I think that's a huge part of overcoming too. A lot of times we look at an obstacle or a situation in our life, and we look at how big it is, and we forget how big we are. And when you're building resilient families that really truly can do resiliency on a day-to-day basis, it's really instilling in your children and in yourself that this mountain may be big, but so am I. And that's the positivity piece of looking at whatever obstacle it is, no matter what age they are. Because like I said, a lot of times in parenting, we focus on how it is when your kids are smaller, and we don't think about what it is when they're older. I have 2 younger siblings. My sisters and I were 11 and 14 years apart. So I essentially watched them kind of grow as I grew. And now that I'm older and I have my own children, they're still, I still hold that piece so dearly, but I realize the resiliency now and what my parents were doing with me that I didn't understand then. And now it's easy to teach them as young women to look at these mountains and also look at how big you are. And I think as parents, it's up to us to teach our children how big they are, to groom how big they are, and not just growing them and keeping them and making sure they're successful, but encouraging them and taking the setbacks and making them look at their setbacks right in the face and not running from them. Because a lot of times it's easy to run from what's wrong and to hide, or to lock it on the inside and not want to deal with it, but face it. Yeah, and a part of resiliency is learning to face those challenges and to look at them in conjunction to how big you are.
Yeah.
I am big. I can accomplish. I can do. No, you won't be able to do everything all at once, but you can definitely accomplish it and overcome it when you face it in the face versus turning your back to it.
And understanding as parents, we want to protect our kids.
Yes.
We want to keep them safe from everything. The first person who bullies our child in any way, shape, or form, we're ready to go to school and be like, look, okay, we got to talk. You know what I mean? Have a conversation. You want to step up for your children in every scenario. And I actually recently, and I cannot remember who said the quote, but I came across a quote paraphrasing that essentially said you don't need to remove your children from challenging situations, but rather prepare them to be able to face it.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, you know, when you're building a resilient family, leading by example. Anybody can give good advice, but to live by that good advice is a whole nother story. And then letting your kids know that, you know, challenges are an opportunity. How often do you hear it? To excel, to see how good you are, to see how great you can be. And resiliency is a direct component of proving how great you can be.
And every kid's resiliency shows different. You know, my older son, he was having some trouble with some things at school, and I learned that his resiliency was in his kindness. He's not a quick to anger type of child. He's very resilient in the fact that he's made up his mind. This is who I am, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And he was resilient against some opposition, and we moved on from it. He went to face new opposition because he had some people that were making fun of him for the friends he had. He has 2 friends that are autistic, and he doesn't see them as that. He just sees them as his friends. Other people thought, maybe you're weird. And he was concerned, and he had a genuine concern when he came to me, like, am I really weird? I'm like, no, it doesn't make you weird to not see what other people think is weird about somebody, but just to see them for what you guys have in common. That's a great thing. He was resilient in his own way. I have a middle daughter. My middle daughter, I love to think that she is going to overcome middle child syndrome. Yes. And she kind of encountered the same thing, and she internalized it, and she was very down about it. And I couldn't believe that. She just internalized it because kids are young. They say things they don't understand sometimes, and she's 4. And my resiliency lesson for her was take ownership of who you are. You have to love what you look like, love what you've become. Every morning, you look yourself square in the face and you say, this is my day. And my kids had a little spitter spatter last night, and I said, listen, we're not fighting. And my daughter said, well, I'm just trying to tell him that if they don't share, you walk away because you don't need them. And I learned in that one moment, and this was just yesterday. I'm leaving the gym. My twins are throwing their socks at each other. He's upset because it didn't go his way, and she's upset because he's not listening. But in that moment, I learned her own resilience. She got it in her own way. And I just share that because that's a story of an everyday, usual thing. Yeah, kids are going to go to school. They're going to experience people once they become adults. They're going to experience people that don't treat them well, that don't like what they do, that don't agree with them. Judges. And they have to be able in their own way. I could have, as a parent, told my son, you know what, you own up, you tell them this or that, you stick up for yourself. And we did. We told him you have to be able to stand your ground for yourself. But we realized he's just fine. He's like, no, I don't need this.
It doesn't bother him enough.
It doesn't bother him enough to push a button. My middle daughter was like, I don't need you.
Yeah.
Right.
She's got a little sassy.
She does have a little sass, but that's her way of being resilient.
And I think, too, as parents, we need to, you know, the way that we talk to our children is so important.
Yes.
Remy and I do this ritual. Now, she'll be 3 in May. And I know it's a surprise for those who know me, but she's a talker. So we have a whole conversation in the mornings when I'm taking her to stay with her sitter. And I'll tell her, I say, Remy, I love your eyes. She goes, Mama, I love your nose. And I'll say, Remy, I love your smile. She goes, Mama, I love you, arm. And so it's this weird little ritual thing that we do. And it shows that now you're talking about loving who you are, every single piece of you. And that's a huge part of resiliency because you need to be right with you and know that, look, this is not going to shake me because I know who I am.
And you're going to encounter those moments no matter what journey of parenthood you're on. I can only imagine what it was like, and sometimes I joke with my parents.
Oh, boy.
You know, I can only imagine what
Hey,
it was
Mom,
like.
I'm sorry.
Hi, Mom, hi, Daddy. You guys are the best. I can only imagine what it was like watching me bump my head through so many different bumps before, you know, you kind of, the shore kind of eases with the waves a little bit. And like when those waves are like, ooh, crash, ooh, I can only imagine what my parents felt watching me and not being able to know that they couldn't just come scoop me up or come save me. And they had to just say, have I built you to be resilient? Or what have I done? And that's a big thing for
That's
parents
big
now.
and that's difficult. That's
Yeah.
a
It
challenge.
is.
It's hard to let go because you want to protect and I've always said, like, I was a helicopter mom, you know, and now I'm here about this lawnmower.
Snowplow.
Yeah,
There's a snowplow
we clear
one, too.
everything out of the
Yeah.
way for our kids because we want life, you know, and then it's like I look back now.
See, I'm not either. I'm kind of a,
You're not either.
I'm kind of like, I'm like a, which is weird because of my list making qualities.
Yes, that's why
With my daughter, I'm more like, I mean, I'm involved, but I'm one of those, the way that I was raised, if I fall down and I'm a little sniffly, my dad always would say, anything broken? You good? Get up and shake it off. And so I do that with Remy, and it's the cutest thing. She's 3, and she does this little shimmy to shake it off. You know, I mean, I have that idea, but I also am aware that you can't just shake everything off.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a more in-depth conversation, even with my 3-year-old. I mean, I talk to her like I'm talking to my counterpart, you know, my peer, and we have full conversations. And but yeah, I mean, you have to, that part I know I'm going to struggle with when she gets older. And I'm feeding off of those moms that, you know, are in our community that have gone through letting go. Because right now, I mean, I pick what that kid, well, I don't even pick what she wears anymore. She's in this I wear pretty dress phase. And like, I don't even know why I bought pants ever because I don't know. But, you know, being in charge of every little aspect of her life, and then one day having to sit back and you just have to sit there and go, okay, I did what I was supposed to do and hope that it was enough.
And those tools that they have, the tools and the strategies that they've modeled from us that you hope they pick up. But that part, you know, letting them express, they need to express their emotions. And
like you talk about building a resilient family, and maybe some of what makes a resilient family, just talking to each other, you know. And it doesn't have to be in the what you would see the magazine cover, sitting down at the dinner table. Yeah, that's ideal. Have dinner as a family any chance that you get. But with sports schedules and late working nights and meetings and conferences and crazy kids that don't sleep at regular times, like most people, you know, it just sometimes that's not realistic. But just saying, you know, even if it is the 5 minutes that it takes you or 10 minutes it takes you to take your child to the daycare that day, have a conversation. You know, I saw that you got upset whenever you couldn't wear the dress that you wanted to wear today because mommy hadn't had a chance to clean it. I understand that upset you, but let's talk about all of the other options you have in your closet and why the dress that you're wearing today was meant to be the one you wear today. And having those conversations, or, you know, I understand the kids at school, you know, I can tell that you're upset about that. Tell me why you handled it the way you did and how that made you feel. And just asking our kids, they don't have to be 16 before we start talking.
Right.
You know, you just talk every single day about every situation and take every opportunity as a learning opportunity.
You do. You take every opportunity with your children as an opportunity.
yes,
You know, one thing I promised my kids I wanted to do better this year. At the start of the year on New Year's Eve, we all came together, the 6 of us. You know, the twins, they really couldn't give their opinion because they're just like, yeah, you go pretty sad. But, you know, my older 2, they really kind of understood, like, oh, okay, it's a new year. And I said, okay, tell me something you want to do better in this new year. And we all said we wanted to do better. And what I wanted to do better was be more present in every moment with my kids. I took a better job a couple of years ago so that I could work a normal kind of 8 to 5 schedule aside from a 12-hour schedule I had prior, so that I could be home every night. We could get our consistent schedule back because they missed it. So I said I wanted to be present in every moment, and I'm learning every opportunity with them is an opportunity. Whether it's, okay, I do not like the way that you swirled the eggs this morning, but it's okay because this is an opportunity for us
to learn manners.
To just not make a mess. Like, we're going to learn how to cook in the kitchen. Or, you know, we're going to learn how to do laundry, just so that you can start picking up on some of these things that they're also your responsibility, aside from what you think they are. Or that you can see I'm vested in you growing just as much as you're vested in me caring.
Yeah.
I care. I want to care. You know, so every opportunity with them, like you said, talking to them, they're young, but they totally have opinions. You'd be surprised where they pick up all their
Talk to my 3-year-old, you won't be surprised anymore.
They formulate a lot of opinions a lot younger now.
Yeah,
than I think than before. And we really have to foster an environment for them to feel comfortable in formulating their opinions and really steer them in the right direction.
And understanding self-reflection. I think, we talk as parents so much about making sure we're molding our kids the right way and giving them the information that they need. But, going back to parent resiliency, to make sure that we understand, that, okay, in self-reflecting, I've had moments where, I work, I'm very busy, and I tried to juggle, having my daughter home with me and working. And I thought, oh, I've got the best of both worlds. I don't pay for a babysitter. This is perfect. And I had to self-reflect and realize I wasn't being the best version of myself for my daughter in that scenario, where as much as that seemed great in theory, my daughter needed my attention, and she needed someone's consistent attention. And I was so blessed that we got an amazing babysitter who she just adores. I think she likes her better than me sometimes. But, and I had to have that self-reflection to look at me and say, okay, am I doing everything? And am I being the best parent that I can be? Or is there something else I can do differently as well?
Yes. And that is a part of building resiliency in parenting. It's so important for us to really realize how we interact with other adults, how we interact with one another. It really plays a role in how our children see resiliency.
What do they say? Tiny eyes are always watching.
They are.
Always got their eye on us.
I hope that everybody has checked out our website. Yay! Newsymom.com if you haven't. But there's a great article I think that Michaela wrote yesterday about how children handle arguing between parents. And it's interesting because I know when my husband and I argue, we always look and see who's around and who's not around, or we'll just say, we're going to table this. So that we don't, and we try our hardest not to argue.
My daughter will still say to me, are you two getting a divorce?
Yeah, our older son really, and it's funny how kids think that. Like our older son, he asked us one day, he said, okay, guys, if you get divorced, can you get remarried? I was like, what? He was like, yeah, like if you get divorced from somebody, can you like remarry them? I was like, yeah, of course you can.
Who's getting divorced?
Whoever. And I just answered him like, yeah, of course. I'm thinking, okay, maybe you had a conversation with a friend at school, whatever. He's like, oh, okay, well, you guys can keep arguing. I was like, what? And my husband and I looked at each other like.
Well, you think about when you look at what children go through. And I look back on my experiences in high school, for example, and the smallest, now looking back, were the smallest little issues. Like I can remember begging my mom, tears rolling down my face, and not make me go to school because I had a pimple. I was like, I can't go to school. You don't understand what I'm going to face. This is not normal. Like I'm 16, everybody has pimples. But it was a big deal, and I begged to be able to not go to school that day. And looking back, I'm going, look, if I got a pimple, y'all are just going to deal with it, and we're going to be all right. We're going to get through this together. But that's the mindset of a child, where the smallest things are the biggest things. And when you're in your household, that's their safe place. And if we are arguing as parents, or we're stressed about work or stressed about finances, we need to, I don't think we need to shelter our children from those real life scenarios, because they matter and they need to see that they exist. But I think that we need to make sure that the piece of those scenarios they're getting is appropriate for who they are in that moment.
Yes.
And understanding and kind of talking them through it. And that's resiliency on both ends, parents and children.
It is. And we always teach our kids, because they're like, are you arguing? Are you arguing? But we always tell them communication is everything. We don't bicker with one another because we don't love one another. We're finding the safe ground of where we're going to find the best option.
Yeah, I love my boyfriend with all my heart, but I tell him, I'm like, I gotta love you. Why else would I put up with you? That's just evidence that I love you.
Well, and we want to teach them also that communication is not always going to be the way you like it. Everyone isn't always going to agree with what you have to say. They're not going to agree with your solution. You might think your solution is the best solution there is, but everybody isn't going to agree with that. How you handle your disagreements makes a big difference. And as parents, I think we have to reflect that type of resiliency. How you handle your disagreements, whether it's work, friends, family, partnerships, whatever it is, you have to look at that communication and that resiliency and how you handle your communication with others in order to properly reflect that to your kids and properly teach that to them.
Yeah.
To teach them that communication is a big part of resiliency.
Absolutely. And there's balance.
And that's, and I think we talked about way in the beginning that see that as an opportunity for learning and growth.
Yes.
So that's great. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit today, and
There'll be a pop quiz. Team
at the bottom of the comment section. But so many points were brought up today. But turn the TV off. Find something a little more positive in your household. Go for the walks, and then reach out to community. There's support out there. Don't ever go through this alone. There's nothing that you need to go through things with alone. You're going to find support groups. You're going to find organizations, agencies, reading materials on Newsy Mom that you'll be able to relate to, because
not to mention just moms
go through it.
Like,
right.
not to just, I mean, because if you're going through a scenario and you're like, oh my gosh, this is too much, or am I the only one doing this? I guarantee you're not the only one that has gone either through exactly or very similar of a situation that would have some feedback and be there and have your back. So.
And it's not even so much the situation, because sometimes I'll hear people say, well, they don't know what I'm going through. But we can give you techniques or skills or strategies to cope, because we've been through something that is similar.
Absolutely similar.
Well, I'm real thrilled with today's session, and I hope everybody else is too. I'd like to thank Michaela and Shaheedrah for joining me today. There's been a lot of valuable and practical information in some of our stories that's been shared, and I want to make sure we all remember to be that rubber band, to be able to have that resilience, to bounce back and overcome some of our stressors and challenges in our lives. COAD is a child care resource agency for 31 counties in Eastern Ohio. This broadcast is brought to you today in partnership with the Ohio Children's Trust Fund and the Eastern Ohio Regional Prevention Council, whose mission is to prevent child abuse and neglect through investing in strong communities, healthy families, and safe children. The Eastern region consists of the following 10 counties: Belmont, Carroll, Coshocton, Guernsey, Harrison, Jefferson, Monroe, Muskingum, Noble, and Tuscarawas. And thank you again. Remember to join us again in 2 weeks on April 23rd. Michaela and Shaheedrah will be back again with us for a follow-up session on additional techniques and ways that we can continue to build our resiliency in ourselves as parents or caregivers or guardians, and then also in our children. Remember to visit our YouTube channel, COAD for Kids. All our video lives are on there. And April is National Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. So let's remember to work together as a community, reach out to help one another. And tomorrow is Wear Blue to help raise awareness for child abuse and neglect. Thank you and have a great night.